Every morning, two neighbors leave for work. David leaves first. He's always in a hurry. His calendar is full, his phone never stops ringing. Everyone assumes he's successful. 10 minutes later, James walks out. No designer clothes, no luxury watch, no rush. Most people barely notice him. But if both men stopped working today, David would run out of money in a few months. James might never have to work again. Same neighborhood, similar salaries when they started, completely different futures. So what happened? Today, we're counting down 10 reasons the middle class stays busy while the wealthy keep getting richer. And I think number 1 is the mistake almost everyone makes without realizing it. Number 10, they sell time. The wealthy build ownership. Every morning at 8, David clocks in. His day has already been sold. 8 hours belong to someone else, sometimes 10, sometimes 12. When he works more, he earns more. When he stops, the money stops too. James used to live exactly the same way. Years ago, he also traded hours for income. Until he realized something that completely changed how he looked at money. There are only 24 hours in a day, and no matter how talented you are, you eventually run out of hours to sell. So instead of asking, how can I work more? James started asking, how can something work without me? He slowly bought pieces of businesses, investments, assets, things that continued producing value after he closed his laptop. It didn't happen overnight, but every year, less of his income depended on his time. David believed time creates money. James learned ownership creates wealth. Those sound similar. They're not, because one keeps you running, and the other slowly lets you stop. And that's exactly why the next difference is so dangerous. Number 9, they confuse being busy with making progress. David's phone never stops vibrating. Emails, messages, calls, meetings about meetings. At the end of every day, he feels exhausted and, strangely, accomplished. After all, he was busy. But a strange question rarely enters his mind. What actually moved my life forward today? James asks himself that question every evening. Not, was I busy, but what produced results? Because motion and progress are not the same thing. A rocking chair moves all day. It never goes anywhere. Read that again. A rocking chair moves all day, yet never travels an inch. The middle class is often rewarded for activity. The wealthy become obsessed with outcomes. David finishes 20 small tasks. James finishes one important one. A year later, David wonders why life feels the same. James wonders where the time went. Because while everyone else celebrated being busy, he quietly built something that kept growing. And what distracted David wasn't just work. It was something much smaller, something almost invisible. Number 8, they let every notification control their attention. Before David even gets out of bed, his phone has already decided how his morning will go. One notification becomes 3. 3 become 12. News, messages, social media, breaking headlines, someone's opinion, someone else's success. An hour disappears without him noticing. James also owns a smartphone, but he discovered something most people never think about. Attention is an investment. Where you place it today determines what grows tomorrow. Every interruption has a hidden price, not because it steals seconds, but because it destroys focus. And focus is where valuable work happens. James checks messages on his schedule, not everyone else's. He protects his attention the same way people protect money, because he understands something David hasn't realized yet. Money lost can often be earned again. Attention lost is gone forever. That's why every morning, David starts his day reacting. James starts his day creating. It looks like a tiny difference, but tiny differences repeated every single day become completely different lives. And the next habit quietly makes that gap even bigger. Number 7, every raise becomes a lifestyle upgrade. A year later, both David and James receive good news. They've each made more money than they did last year. David celebrates. A nicer apartment, a newer car. Weekend dinners become expensive restaurants. The vacation gets upgraded. The phone gets replaced. None of it feels irresponsible. After all, he earned it. James celebrates too, but differently. Most of his extra income never reaches his lifestyle. It reaches his investments, his assets, his future. Because James learned a rule that sounds simple, but quietly changes everything. The fastest way to stay broke is to spend every raise before it has a chance to change your future. David's income grows, so do his expenses. James' income grows, his ownership grows even faster. From the outside, both men appear to be moving forward, but one is building a bigger lifestyle. The other is building a bigger future. And over time, those become two completely different lives. Which brings us to something even more dangerous. Number 6. They buy relief instead of solving the problem. Friday finally arrives. David feels exhausted, so he rewards himself. Shopping, takeout, a weekend getaway, a few online purchases. For a moment, he feels better, until Monday morning arrives and the stress returns exactly where he left it. James understands the need for rest, but years ago, he noticed something strange. Most people aren't spending money because they need something. They're spending money because they need to feel something. Less stressed, less bored, less overwhelmed. The purchase doesn't solve the problem, it simply pauses the feeling. Then the feeling comes back, and so does the spending. James started asking himself a different question. What's actually causing this? Instead of buying temporary relief, he fixed permanent problems. He delegated, he simplified, he removed unnecessary commitments. Because temporary comfort is expensive, and permanent solutions often pay you back for years. And that's where the biggest difference begins. We're halfway through this countdown. Everything we've covered so far explains why some people stay busy, but the next 4 habits explain why some people quietly become wealthy while everyone else wonders how they did it. The strange part? Most of these habits don't look impressive at all. That's exactly why almost nobody copies them. Number 5. They consume more than they create. Every evening, David sits on the couch. One video becomes 5, 5 become 20. The algorithm always has something else to show him. Another opinion, another podcast, another headline, another success story. Hours disappear. James also learns every day, but then he closes the screen and builds something. A business idea, an investment plan, a skill, a system. Because information only changes your life when it becomes action. James once wrote something on a sticky note above his desk. Consumers watch the future. Creators build it. That sentence changed how he spent his evenings. David ends each day knowing a little more. James ends each day owning a little more. Knowledge feels productive. Creation actually is. And once James understood that, he stopped chasing something David still believed was the answer. Number 4. They think more income automatically creates wealth. David has one financial goal: earn more. A higher salary, a bigger bonus, a better paying job. Surely more income must solve everything. But every time his paycheck grows, life somehow becomes just as expensive. James discovered a truth that most people learn far too late. Income can make you rich, but only for 1 month. Wealth is what remains after the income stops. That's why James cared less about how much he earned and more about how much he kept, how much he invested, how much he owned. Because income buys today's lifestyle. Ownership buys tomorrow's freedom. David kept asking, how can I make more? James kept asking, how can I need less and own more? Those two questions sound almost identical, but one creates dependence, the other creates independence. And the next habit is the reason so many people never make that transition. Number 3, they wait for the perfect time. David had a list. Start investing when the salary is higher. Start a business when life becomes less busy. Learn new skills when work slows down. Save more next year. The plan always made sense. The timing never arrived. Because someday has a strange habit of becoming never. James used to think the same way until he realized something that changed how he made decisions. The perfect time doesn't exist. There will always be uncertainty, always be risk, always be another reason to wait. So instead of waiting until he felt ready, he started before he was ready. His first investment wasn't perfect. His first business idea wasn't perfect. His first mistakes were expensive. But every mistake taught him something waiting never could. David believed confidence comes before action. James discovered confidence comes because of action. The people who build wealth aren't always the smartest. They're usually the ones who started while everyone else was still preparing. And that simple difference led to the biggest financial advantage of all. Number 2, they focus on earning money instead of making money work. Every month, David works hard for his paycheck. The money arrives, bills leave, the cycle repeats. 30 days later, he starts over. James also worked hard, but every dollar had a job before it reached his account. Some bought investments, some bought ownership, some stayed as cash for future opportunities. Because James believed money should be treated like an employee. Every dollar should go to work, not sit around waiting to be spent. At first, it didn't make much difference. A few dollars here, a few investments there. Nothing looked dramatic. But compound growth never looks impressive in the beginning. It looks boring. Then one day, it looks unstoppable. While David continued working for money, James quietly built a system where money started working for him. And eventually, the system became stronger than the effort. Which brings us to the final reason. The one difference that separates people who stay busy forever from those who slowly become financially free. Number 1, they build someone else's dream before building their own. 20 years passed. David was still the first person to arrive at work, still dependable, still busy, still waiting for the next promotion that promised life would finally become easier. His boss became wealthier every year. David became more experienced every year, but experience alone wasn't creating ownership. One Saturday morning, David walked outside and saw James watering the plants in his front yard. No expensive mansion, no flashy sports car, no designer clothes, just an ordinary man living an ordinary morning. David smiled and asked, "How did you get so far ahead?" James looked at him for a moment and said something David would never forget. "I stopped trying to earn a better life and started building one." That sentence stayed with David for weeks because he finally understood what had separated them all those years. It wasn't intelligence. It wasn't luck. It wasn't even income. It was direction. David spent years becoming more valuable for someone else's future. James spent years becoming more valuable for his own. And that's the difference almost nobody notices. The middle class often believes working harder will eventually create freedom. The quietly wealthy know something different. Hard work is important, but hard work without ownership creates dependence. Ownership creates freedom. Here's the truth. Being busy isn't the enemy. Most successful people work incredibly hard. The real question is, at the end of your day, what did your hard work build? Did it only earn today's paycheck? Or did it also build tomorrow's freedom? Because one day, both David and James stopped working. David stopped because he had to. James stopped because he could. And that is the difference between making a living and building a life. Maybe that's why the wealthiest people often look the most ordinary. They no longer need to look successful. They've spent years building something far more valuable than appearances. They've built choices. They've built time. They've built freedom. And in the end, those are the only things money was ever supposed to buy.